Love, exciting and new.
Hello, Hannah Waddingham here. Have you seen the fabulous new Sun Princess? World-class entertainment, exceptional dining, and the greatest pizza ever.
It's a love.
Don't miss our Come Aboard sale with up to 40% off and free room upgrades. Visit princess.com or call your travel advisor to book. Princess Cruises. Terms and restrictions apply. Offer ends 2/28/25. Ships are Bermudan and British Registry.
This episode is brought to you by Coffee Mate. After watching this season of the HBO's original series, The White Lotus, this is the tropical getaway I needed. One more pina colada, please.
Hey, you're not on mute.
Oh, I thought I was in paradise. Turns out it was my Coffee Mate. Coffee Mate pina colada and Thai-iced coffee-flavored creamers. Inspired by the newest season of HBO's original series, The White Lotus. For the love of coffee. Try now.
This episode is brought to you by Honda. Introducing the all-new, all-terrain Honda Passport Trail Sport, the most off-road capable Honda Passport Honda has ever dreamt up. The Passport features increased ground clearance, roof rails on all trims, and available specially developed all-terrain tires. And you'll stay comfortable with tri-zone climate control and available features like heated and ventilated front seats and a panoramic moonroof. Learn more at honda.com/passport.
Every year, award season hits and the competition for the coveted hardware is fierce. This year's collection of Less Than Super, Less Than Coherent, and Visionary-Impaired movies nominated for Worst of the Year showcase all that was and all that we wish we could never see again. The 45th Razzies are around the corner, so prep your slop buckets and put on your bestest bib. It's time to dine on this filth fiesta as we kick off the fun on Grading on a Curve. What is up, everyone? Welcome to this edition of Grading on a Curve on the It's Not That Bad podcast channel, a proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network. The Razzies are right around the corner once again, and this year we are treated to the best of the worst, and it is time to take them and rank them in amongst themselves as we prepare for the 45th edition of the Golden Raspberry Awards. How are you guys all doing? And hello to all of our listeners in Sterling, Virginia, and around the world. Time to grade. Because this crop of films, holy crap. Some good-ish, I guess. Some bad-ish, definitely. Some stinkers, most notably. And here to go through the nominees for Worst Picture of the Year, we start off with my lovely wife, Carrie. Carrie, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Can't wait to talk about these 5 gems.
You say that, and I don't know if you know what the word gem means.
It's, a formed crystal. It has jagged edges and shines beautifully bright.
That was beautiful.
That was beautiful.
That was amazing.
That was the most beautiful bullshit I've ever heard. Also, joining in the show, Carson Elkham's back on. How you doing, man?
You know what? We've been here in the past. We've done this episode in the past, and I'm not going to lie to you. I started off with a few rude remarks towards you. We're not doing that this year. I'm proud to be here. I'm stoked to be here, and I can't wait to dive through the absolute piles of shit I have in front of me.
Also, because he didn't learn the first time, Joseph Whalen is back on the show. How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm back. Guys, this is great. I'm super excited. This is going to be a very interesting thing for me to listen to you guys talk about these movies. Because as I pointed out on my first appearance, I'm not really a movie guy. I have a lot more written down in terms of my notes this time around so that I can contribute my nonsense. But otherwise, I think, I'm very excited for this.
And also joining a man who needs no introduction, so he's not going to get any. But at this point, with how many Grading on a Curve episodes he's done, he has qualified for a Purple Heart. Lal Rabashaw is back on the show. Lal, what? You know what you're getting into, right?
I don't agree with Carson. I am discouraged to be here. Everything I love has been bastardized in this episode, and it feels like this list was picked just for me. I I'm excited and scared, and just why does everything I love have to not make a good movie, Jason?
For the record, prior to recording the show, Lyle sends me this message and he's like, "This is my Super Bowl. This is it."
A Batman, Spider-Man, and a video game movie. Come on. Why can't they make these into good things?
Well, let's see here. Sony, DC, and I'm sure there are other reasons in there. David Zaslav, there's one right there.
Ronald Reagan, just
yep.
the person.
Dear listeners, this episode is gonna have some emotions. We're all gonna go through some things, and you're gonna go through them with us. And here's what we're gonna do: we're gonna take the 5 films, we're gonna rank them in amongst themselves, and then at the end of the show, we're gonna have an aggregate score. And golf rules: the lower the score, the better the film. So no more pausing, no more, waiting it out, trying to avoid the inevitable. It is time to grade these films. But before we do, we need to introduce the combatants in the Pentagon of Pain.
Come one, come all to the cavalcade of crap, the Hall of Horrors, the showcase of the intolerables. It's time to introduce our combatants in the contest of champions that is the Pentagon of Pain. Our first contender hit theaters on February 14th and instantly answered the question, how can someone get dumped on Valentine's Day? If we had a spider sense for stupid, it would be tingling. It's Madam Web. Next up comes a movie based on a video game that instantly made us want to rage quit our way out of the theaters. It's proof positive that even Oscar winners slum it from time to time. Brace yourselves for Borderlands. In the next corner comes a film that looks to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the passing of Ronald Reagan by putting forth a biopic that looks and sounds like it was made using a Russian ChatGPT. Bust out the Cole's Notes version of a biography that is Reagan. Our fourth entry is the passion project of a legend director. No, wait, I read that wrong. It's the nightmare fever dream that should have included a commemorative popcorn bucket full of Molly. Make way for Megalopolis. And finally, what better way to follow up a smash hit that earned praise and showed that when they want to, DC can make a good film? By cranking up the show tunes and crapping at a musical that may want to make us apologize to cats. The joke's on us as we watch Joker, Folie à Deux. It's a fight to the finish, and that's just how we felt watching the movies. Let the ranking of the rank begin.
I wish you did the Team Canada anthem at the goal or the championship game, because you would have done a significantly better job.
Popcorn bucket full of Molly.
I knew at one point I had lost Lyle at that point, which, by the way, you should never order the popcorn bucket full of Molly. You will have to go to the bathroom midway through the film. Not saying, but I'm saying.
Good night, itchy eyes. Good night, sudden sneeze. Good night to your symptoms of allergies. Xyzal is the allergy medicine you take before bed. It provides powerful relief while you rest your head. Not just all night, but all the next day. Xyzal keeps working, keeping allergies at bay. And without those annoying symptoms disturbing your rest, you can wake up the next morning feeling your absolute best. Remember, be wise all. Take Xyzal at night.
Hey, it's Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast here to tell you about Michelob Ultra Courtside. It's getting fans closer to the NBA with a chance to win prizes like courtside seats, a trip to All-Star Weekend, and much more. Check it out at MichelobUltra.com/courtside. Michelob Ultra Superior Access, Courtside 24-25 sweepstakes, no purchase necessary. Open to U.S. residents 21 and up. Begins on October 1st, 2024, ends July 1st, 2025. Multiple entry periods. Visit MichelobUltra.com/courtside for free entry deadlines, and official rules. Message and data rates may apply. Void where prohibited.
Make your next move with American Express Business Platinum. You'll get 5 times membership rewards points on flights and prepaid hotels booked on AmexTravel.com. Plus, enjoy access to the American Express Global Lounge Collection. And with the welcome offer of 150,000 points, your business can soar to all new heights. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-platinum. Amex Business Platinum, built for business by American Express.
All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to go through the films, rank them in amongst themselves, and we're going to start with the first film released of the 5, Madam Web, released on February 14th, starring Dakota Johnson, Sydney Sweeney, Isabella Marquez, Celeste O'Connor, Tahar Rahim, Emma Roberts, Adam Scott, and Zosha Mahmood. Directed by S.J. Clarkson. This is actually the first film she has ever directed, but she has also directed episodes of The Defenders and Jessica Jones, so she wasn't unfamiliar with comic book properties. The film had a budget of $80 million. Domestically, only made $43 million, and worldwide made $100 million. When it was released on that President's Day weekend, it debuted at number 2 with only $17.8 million. The number 1 film that week was Bob Marley, One Love, which debuted with $33.6 million. However, there are some accolades, none of them good. At the 2025 Hawaii Film Critics Society Awards, it was nominated for Best Comic Book Film, but lost to Deadpool and Wolverine because it's Deadpool and Wolverine. But it did win Worst Film of the Year, beating out fellow Razzie nominee Borderlands, as well as Night Swim, Argyle, and Here. And at this year's Razzie Awards, it is nominated for Worst Picture. S.J. Clarkson is nominated for Worst Director. Dakota Johnson is nominated for Worst Actress. Tahar Rahim is nominated for Worst Supporting Actor. Emma Roberts is nominated for Worst Supporting Actress, and the film is nominated for Worst Screenplay. According to the critics over at Rotten Tomatoes, this film has a tomatometer of 11% with a popcorn meter of 54%. And over at Metacritic, has a Metascore of 26. At IMDb, it sits at 4.0 for a 40% score. At Letterboxd, it sits at 1.5 stars out of 5 for a 30% score. And at the Movie Database has a 54% rating, giving this an aggravated aggregate of 35.83%. And we're kicking off with the lowest aggravated aggregate film of all of the 5. So Lyle, comic book film, it's Sony, it's Madam Web. Your thoughts?
It's a shame that the only camera they had to use to film this movie had a broken zoom button. That's what I'm going to say first. That's my first thing I'm going to say. Random cuts, more cuts than Ric Flair's forehead.
Oh,
I did. The only thing I liked was the jungle spider tribe people. That was the only, and that happened in the first 5 minutes. Everything else is complete bull.
How did you like it when I don't understand how they spoke English?
I don't get it either, but at least the design was cool. I liked the origin all the way up to when it switches to modern day, and then we see how desperate Adam Scott is for money. It was absolutely not a Spider-Person movie. The whole time you're waiting for them to suit up, and they don't until like the last 30 seconds of it. And even then, it's not like anything special. Evil Spider-Man, I don't even want to get started. I don't understand. They had so much to pull from. They pulled from none of it. They went in a completely different direction. When you take on the responsibility, great power will come. Off. That's terrible. What are you talking about? All of these characters kept saying the same thing over and over and over again to just set up the situation. And nobody likes origin stories. Let's give you 4. It doesn't make any sense, so it's my 4.
Oh, dear. Tell me how you really feel. Carrie, over to you. Madam Web, your thoughts.
Oh, no. I know that I'm going to stand alone on this one. It's sitting at number 2 for me. Because, you know what? If you want to suspend believability, it's not that bad. However, I will say that what troubled me deeply is if I'm ever dying or in need of a paramedic, please do not call Madam Webb, because I would for sure die. Like, I know that she should probably know that you need to give 2 rescue breaths when you're giving CPR, or the person's going to run out of oxygen eventually. But they just kept with the chest compressions and adding no breath, and your person's going to die. You're not really helping anyone. So that was what really bothered me. That was my takeaway, that, for a paramedic, you would think that maybe they would know CPR. But that aside, you know what? I don't understand, and maybe you guys can help me out, but why the shade that the actress is getting? Like what, where's the hate? Really? She was fun. She was sassy. Like she was, the lines were quippy. They were, she was kind of fun, kind of edgy. Why the shade? Why so much hate?
Okay. So before I get into that, I am going to agree that this is also my number 2.
Oh, thank God.
But it's my number 2, I think, more because there are other films in this group of 5 that are more tragically flawed than this one. But bear with me here. Dakota Johnson doesn't move the needle for me at all. When it comes to the 3 girls, Isabella Marquette, I think, is unfairly lumped in. I actually liked her in this. Sydney Sweeney, meh. Tahar Rahim. This has to be one of the most egregious, horrible versions of ADR that I have ever seen in my entire freaking life. And I watch Godzilla films that are overdubbed, and this was worse than that. And the thing is, too, the voiceover quality, like, you can tell it's ADR. Have you ever gone to like one of those like AI voice generators where you just type it in and it talks back to you? These days it sounds good. Back then it sounded like a machine. This sounded like a machine. It sounded like they had like the monkey mail and you had to type in the script, and that's how they replaced his voice, because it was not even close at all. And I know people are saying, well, this isn't really Madam Web, but you can see aspects of it. The fact that Ezekiel Sims, the character that Tahar Rahim is playing, is walking around barefoot, I'm fine with that, because that's actually somewhat comic accurate. I don't know where the hell that he hid his spider suit, because he's like in a suit in the subway, and then all of a sudden, boom, he's got his spider suit on. Like, okay, whatever, right? Is it flawed? Yes, it is. Is it as flawed as others in this? No, it's not. And there's something, there are aspects of it I don't mind, but it's Sony, the people that brought us Morbius. And I remember Morbius, and I don't want to remember Morbius, but it is still my number 2 based on everything else. Carson, Madam Web.
Well, first of all, I'm going to retract one of your statements, Jason. And no, I don't want to see him barefoot. Put the little piggies away. No desirable aspect of that.
But if it's comic accurate, you can at least understand why.
No. I'm just going to shelf it.
It's not like it was filmed by Tarantino, because then we'd have like close-up shots of his feet.
I was going to say, it's not Salma Hayek either, if you know what I'm saying, in that one awkward scene where he casts himself. Anyway, I'm going off track. You know what? Dakota Johnson is a true daughter of Hollywood. And I'm kind of with Carrie here. I'm like, I don't understand the hate, but I feel like I'm seeing 2 versions of Dakota Johnson. I'm seeing Act 1 Dakota Johnson, and then I'm seeing Act 2, dear God, these, like, you could tell the scenes that were shot last, because this poor woman just gives less and less of a shit as it goes. And it just knowing that she's just in an absolute stinker. And it's just, it feels like there's no point to doing anything in the back half of the film, because people seem so detached, especially like when your lead actress is kind of fronting that. There's moments I like any movie, and there's fun moments to it. Like I agree with Lyle where the opening 5 minutes is actually like a cool setup, despite the fact that I don't understand how they speak English. But I just feel like this could be described as Madam Mail It In, and that's just the back half of the movie. Like I didn't have an issue with Dakota Johnson's casting. I didn't have an issue with really her acting in the first half, but it's really hard as someone watching and for your audience to realize how much you don't give a shit as the movie goes on, and I don't blame her. The script went through multiple rewrites. Apparently, the script she signed on with was so different from the end of the movie that like you just can't blame her. And I think this is the just toughest aspect for me is like when an actor or actress leading the movie doesn't care, why should the audience? And that's kind of where I sit with it, where I'm just like, yeah, is it the worst movie I've ever seen? Absolutely not. But I just simply don't care. And I think like a real sad part of it too is like you have a really strong female cast, and like I'm not gonna lie to you, Adam Scott may have been like my favorite character in the movie just for how bad he was like in different aspects. And I'm like, that's so that's who I have to give props to just because he's in so not few scenes, but so select scenes that I'm like, oh, thank God you're breaking up the monotony of your lead cast not giving a shit. So long story short, I have it at number 3.
I think also to add to that, you had finally the real possibility of tying the Sony Spider-Verse to the Marvel MCU by introducing Madam Web, who is a true multiversal character, and you don't do shit with
That's the whole thing in the comic. The whole point is she's the centerpiece of all of it. You could have had so many different routes to take with this. You could have tied it into the Spider-Verse, for God's sake, the animated ones.
Absolutely.
There was 1,000 different routes to take, and it feels like they just went with the most easy route out of all of them, with every character. And this Spider-Man, Ezekiel, everything. They just went, okay, what can we get out the quickest kind of thing.
100%. Like, I'm going to ask you guys this because I'm not super enamored into and knowing what aspects of Spider-Man Sony owns, but correct me if I'm wrong. Do they not just own all of it?
No, they don't. So the way it works is that there are certain characters that Sony can use right now because they had that Sony, they did have the Spider-Verse, and then of course they're doing Spider-Man films with Marvel in conjunction. So that's why you're only seeing certain Spider villains on the actual screen. Obviously, you could have Spider-Man go up against Kingpin because that's more like a Daredevil kind of villain. But here, there's a reason why they went with these Spider-Women, because Marvel still has the rights to Jessica Drew. So you had Julia Carpenter, not Julia Cartwright, which they have her written in here. So you can't even get the name right. It's Julia Carpenter, people. So you had Spider-Women that they had the rights to, but they just couldn't add Jessica Drew into it. Joseph, over to you, Madam Web.
Man, guys, I had fun watching this one, to be honest. Mostly because it kind of approached like so bad it's good territory, like right out of the hop. Like it's 2003. The first thing that we need to see, so we know it's 2003, is a blockbuster. I love that. I was like, all right, sweet, I'm in. This is great. And then her line, Cassie, when she's like after drowning, also, where did the car go? She's in a car. We don't see the car anywhere. How is she retrieved, but we don't see the car anywhere? Anyways, that's aside. I don't know. But her line, I just want to go home and watch Idol. I love that. I was like, all right, sweet. Here we go. We are fully in 2003. They have to hit you over the head with it. So much so that when she went to the doctor and the doctor was like, just relax, go home and watch old movies. I wished so much that the doctor was like, just go home and watch some movies from 20 years ago and just listed off the highest grossing films of 1983. Like I was like, please just go all the way in on this. But honestly, like I really I just enjoyed most of this film. There were things that I didn't really like. The 3 underage girls, or in the movie, underage girls dancing on a table in a diner, and like nobody's batting an eye at this. It's like, yeah, this is what happens in a diner. Like, okay, sure. And also Ben, which by the way, Adam Scott, the fact that I didn't know he was in this movie until I saw him the first time. And the fact that he's named Ben made the Parks and Rec fan in
Yes,
me so
thank
happy.
you.
It's like, and then like I think he was fantastic. I really do. Like he was completely like Ben Wyatt in this, like to the point where when Cassie brings the three girls, which by the way, it was never like she was the person of interest. Like her description was the person of interest for kidnapping these three girls. I know that her and Ben are like close, but like why does he not at all like bat an eye at this? Like, oh yeah, like I just have these three like teenage girls with me now, so you're just gonna have to look after them while I go, do whatever I've got to do. Anyways, I found that really weird. But yeah, he was just like completely like Ben Wyatt, but also now in a Spider-Man universe movie. I was like, all right, sweet, this is great. I had it as my number 2. I was like, I enjoyed it for what it was. I know that it was really bad and a lot of people hated it, but I don't read comic books. I have no context for this. I was just like, yeah, it's 2003. Yeah, let's do it. Blockbuster.
Hell yeah.
I think
love
the most egregious thing here is that you tell me that Adam Scott wouldn't make a fantastic Beyonder in Secret Wars.
Yes. He would make a fantastic character in many aspects, but just not in this.
And now that chance is ruined. God damn it, Madam Web. Borderlands, released August 9th, starring Kate Blanchett, Kevin Hart, Jack Black, Ariana Greenblatt, Jamie Lee Curtis, Florian Mutanabu, and Javina Gavankar. Directed by Eli Roth. The film was apparently done in 2022, but Tim Miller was brought in to do major reshoots and changed a ton of the film, meaning a new score even had to be done because the original score didn't fit what the film became. It also changed it from an R rating to a PG-13 film. The movie had a budget of $115 million. Domestically, made only $15.4 million. Worldwide, made $32.9 million. On the weekend it was released, debuted at number 4 with only $8.6 million. The highest grossing debut was It Ends With Us, which debuted at number 2 with $50 million. Sitting at number 1 was the third week of Deadpool and Wolverine with $53 million. At the 2024 Golden Trailer Awards, it won the award for Best Motion Title Graphics, which I kind of agree with, and was nominated for Best Fantasy Adventure, but lost to Dune Part 2. And at the Razzies, this year it is nominated for Worst Picture. Eli Roth is nominated for Worst Director. Kate Blanchett is nominated for Worst Actress. Jack Black and Kevin Hart are both nominated for Worst Supporting Actor. And nominated for Worst Screen Combo, quote unquote, any two obnoxious characters, but especially Jack Black. Let's get to the numbers here. At Rotten Tomatoes, the film has a tomatometer of 10% and a popcorn meter of 49%. Over at Metacritic, it sits at 26. At IMDb, it has 4.6 stars for a 46% rating. Over at Letterboxd, it sits at 1.5 stars out of 5 for a 30% score. And at the Movie Database, it sits at 57%, giving this an aggravated aggregate of 36.3%. So, Joseph, I'm going to start with you on this one. Borderlands, what do you got?
Okay. So I know that Lyle in particular is going to go deep diving into the backstory and the context of the Borderlands video game. I have no idea about the source material. I didn't play the video game. I watched this movie without knowing anything about the universe in which it's set. I just watched the movie. And, oh, God. Listen, I'm not going to say anything about the actual movie. There is one exchange of dialogue that I am not kidding you. It is the stupidest exchange I have ever heard in my life. And I wrote it down. And I also went back earlier today because like, maybe I misheard it. Maybe I'm wrong. And I went back and I read the full transcript. It is exactly this. And it is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. So Lilith, outside when they go to the Jamie Lee Curtis's, little wherever the hell she is, she goes to Tina. Your father is Atlas. Tina says, yes and no. Very interesting. Lilith, in a very snarky way, which is supposed to be like, oh, I'm smarter than you, I know more than you, says, not a yes or no question. What the f*** is the answer if it isn't yes or no? When I heard that, I immediately disassociated from the rest of the movie. I'm not engaging in this movie in any way. Like, sure, fine, but I was like, no, like that's what are we talking about? What even is logic anymore? You just completely disregard everything that we already know and is established as a society. I was just like, nope, not doing it. Also Kevin Hart, if I wasn't like profoundly tired of him, I would find him like sort of endearing in this role as opposed to being like Dwayne the Rock Johnson's hapless sidekick. Like, but he's just not, no, like he doesn't pull it off. The big shootout scene with Ace of Spades, that was great. If it wasn't for like the stupid setup of like the robot pooping, I was like, okay, like I was on board with it up until that point. But anyway, yeah, no, I did not care for this at all. It's number 4. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. Number 4.
Lyle, do you need to rage on this one?
I do, but this one makes me more sad than anything because I was so on board for this when they first announced it because I've played all 3 of the Borderlands games and Borderlands the pre-sequel, which is the one that takes place before 1 and 2. I love them very much. Play them with my friends whenever they come out, the whole campaign. And it just felt like they Saturday morning cartooned it. That's what it felt like. It felt like they took this very snarky with dirty humor for sure, but it wasn't all toilet humor like it was in the movie. The biggest mistake that happened in the production of this, which was a nightmare, as with most video game movies, they took the R rating away. If they would have left the R rating in and kept the original version of this movie, I have a feeling it actually would have been something pretty good. Other than that, Cate Blanchett, an amazing actress, incredible professional. She's just not Lilith at 50 plus. Lilith is supposed to be, I believe, I can't remember exactly in the games, but I believe like early 20s, maybe even 19 or something like that. They've taken all of these characters that had really cool backstories and have just basically turned them into the archetype of whatever actor was playing them. It is such a Kevin Hart performance. It's not Roland. Roland in the games is a very serious soldier type character. It's just Kevin Hart doing Kevin Hart things, much like Joseph said, The Rock. They play the same person in every movie. And unfortunately, it's the same thing here. Terrible CGI. Jack Black as Claptrap, I was hoping was going to be my saving grace, but you can tell they just neutered it with the jokes. They took that R rating away and took away everything about it that was funny and good. And one of the things that bothers me the most, I don't know why, is they do the Claptrap can't do stairs joke, which they repeat in the games, but then somehow he gets into Lilith's house that has stairs. How'd he get in there? You just made this gag, and then anyway, that's just for me. It just ruined the best character in the series with Tiny Tina as well. Anybody who plays the games knows what I'm talking about. She was so good. The breakout star of the second Borderlands game. Everybody was clamoring. They made a whole game for her, Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, because she was so popular. And they just kind of made her this cartwheeling, like, damsel in distress girl who kind of makes snarky jokes. Yeah, it's my 3. Not a fan. The only reason I give it a 3 is because it is Borderlands on the screen in front of me, so I can kind of appreciate it for that. But it's so, like I said, it feels like a Saturday morning cartoon version.
All right. I'm going to preface this by saying I have never played the video game. I went into this film not knowing a damn thing about the property. All I saw was the trailer before going to see the film. Said, oh, I can see what they're trying to do. They're trying to Guardians of the Galaxy this thing. Okay, whatever. I think that lack of understanding of the backstory of the characters and how they're supposed to be allows me to make this my number 1 film of the 5. Hear me out. Hear me out. You guys are right. The CGI is not great. It's not. Jack Black is annoying as hell. Cate Blanchett is great. Jamie Lee Curtis, all good. Ariana Greenblatt, kind of annoying. Like, you had a 50, and Kevin Hart surprisingly tolerable in this. And normally I'm not the biggest Kevin Hart fan, but tolerable in this. There are some decent moments in the film. There's some good comedy. There's some good physical comedy to it. The whole bus trip going, oh, sure, you're not a vault hunter. That part was okay. But I think the thing is that I see what they were trying to do with the film. I don't disagree with the idea of knocking it down from R to PG, because you have to think that PG-13, this is the age group that would want to go see this film. You make it R, you limit the amount of box office you're going to bring in.
However, Borderlands 1 and 2 came out like 10, 15 years ago.
Fair enough, but the way they're doing it makes that target audience maybe not up to 18. So I can see why they would want to do it, especially if you're putting in $115 million into the budget. You need to maximize the ability to bring that budget back. I didn't hate it. It was flawed, but it's kind of a fun romp. Yeah, it's your typical MacGuffin-esque kind of quest film, but it still had some decent moments. I think the biggest knock on this film for me is that most of the best moments in this film are in the damn trailer. You don't need to go see this film. Watch the trailer. It's all there. Trailers do bad things for films, but it's my number one because everything else is more flawed. Carson, over to you. Borderlands.
Sorry, I gotta take a breath after you just said that was your number one.
Yeah.
Jesus. All right. So I have some like weird personal beef with this movie that actually has like nothing to do with the movie that I gotta go into first. So this came out in August, right? Like I want to say it was early-ish August, because I was super hyped for another movie coming out in August, and that movie was Alien Romulus. And I was following every bit of material media I could get for Alien Romulus. And if any of you are popcorn bucket people not filled with Molly, then you'll know that a legendary popcorn bucket came out of the xenomorph head. It was a wicked size. The detail on it was really cool. I've never been a popcorn bucket person, and this was my dream to get. So I go to the movie theater on Thursday. The movie comes out Friday. I go Thursday morning because I know they get the goddamn shipment of the popcorn buckets in on Wednesday night. And I go there, and there's not a single alien popcorn bucket left. But you know what's sitting on every goddamn row in that movie theater? Jack Black's little box robot popcorn bucket. And I swear to God, it was taunting me because some man came in the Wednesday night and bought every single alien popcorn bucket. So when I saw Alien Romulus, no, Carson didn't get a popcorn bucket. He had to stare at that stupid robot in the line the entire time. And I saw it twice in theaters 3 weeks apart, and that stupid popcorn bucket was still there. So not only did that movie have a bad blood going into watching it, but it took away the alien popcorn bucket that I so desperately wanted. Anyway, thanks for coming to that TED Talk. This movie, minus my bias about the damn popcorn bucket, is what I like to call nowadays the Uncharted effect. This is just like Borderlands neutered. And Lyle, I'm so on board with you. If you have a game that's rated M, there is zero reason that rating should be under 14A at a minimum. Like, stop doing this. Like, even if you're not a fan, like the Five Nights at Freddy's movie did the same thing. Why are we taking these elements of games and just slashing them? Because you can't do it. You cannot keep the character and the kind of color of these games if you're going to slash kind of some of the themes and mature themes of that. That being said, I got to push back on the Cate Blanchett character as Lilith in general, because I'm going to do another comparison. She, to me, is like the Han Solo effect. And let me clarify that I've never seen, played a Borderlands game. My girlfriend's brother is a diehard Borderlands fan, and this made him criminally miserable. I'm assuming similar to Lyle. But, like, there's lines that I wrote down that she says in this weird, like, coarse, lowering voice, cynical rasp tone that's like, I'm getting too old for this shit, or God, I hate this planet, or we're gonna need some wheels. And I'm like, can you be a person? Like, just be like an actual human being on the screen. And the same thing goes for Kevin Hart. The same thing goes for Jack Black. I don't want to see Kevin Hart play Kevin Hart in a damn movie. Be an actor. That's your job. Go back to stand-up if you can't act. And Jack Black, I have such a place in my heart for. But once again, he's been typecast into this role of like, oh, we need The Rock, we need Jack Black, we need Ryan Reynolds, we need Kevin Hart. I don't care. No one cares anymore. And I'm just so aggravated at this entire casting choices in Hollywood now. I'm mad at the fact that ratings are getting slashed. I'm mad at the fact that adaptations aren't given a shit out. And this infuriates me so very much. I'm not even going to go into some of the aspects I wanted to because Joseph and Lyle and you, Jason, hit them right on the head. It's a 4 for me, and I will never, ever watch this movie again.
All right, Carrie, over to you to finish up Borderlands.
Well, that was the saddest story about the popcorn bucket. And all I can say is I can relate because when Deadpool and Wolverine came out, 2 things. I really wanted the friendship bracelet that just didn't exist. Like, I mean, come on, they missed an absolute marketing opportunity. Okay, so I, in my head, thought when I bought the tickets and we went to the movie theater that I would have been able to secure the friendship bracelet, which didn't exist, but also the popcorn bucket. I wanted a Deadpool and or Wolverine or both. I would have shelled out the $40 for both, but I didn't get a Deadpool or Wolverine popcorn bucket either.
See, I appreciate the emotion. See, she gets it.
It's sad. Thank you. Yeah, well, you're not alone. You're not alone on that one. But also, who's not alone, Jay, I agree with everything that you said.
No. Just end right there.
Stop talking right now. No, it's Borderlands is my number 1, and I hear the pain behind being the video game fan and living in that world and wanting more for the property. And I'm sorry that didn't manifest on screen or didn't translate on screen, but I enjoyed. Okay, so seeing the trailer, I was really excited about this movie. I didn't know a thing about Borderlands. I'll completely admit, didn't even know it was a video game. I mean, I'm sure I knew, but I had no idea. You know, to me, it was kind of like there's that TV series. What is that one? Twisted Metal.
Mm-hmm.
That to me just looked cool, right? It looked cool. Borderlands looked cool, but these are not video game properties that I'm aware of. So I completely apologize for my ignorance of the Borderlands world. So that's my disclaimer. But I loved that. And we were literally just sitting and talking at lunch before recording. We were talking with our oldest son, and the idea came up that, you know what, this could be a fun family movie to watch, right? It very much is a popcorn movie. So we make some popcorn, we have a few laughs, maybe not at Jack Black's character because I like Jack Black. I really do. But I found him to be so annoying, like overly done Jack Black. But with that said, I also am not a Kevin Hart fan. Generally, I find that Kevin Hart is Kevin Hart is Kevin Hart. And in any other role, but this one, he seemed to have a very serious side. He seemed more withdrawn. He didn't seem to be Kevin Hart playing as the bounty hunter, I guess, or the
typical annoying kind of Kevin Hart character.
Yeah, no, but he was very much like the scene in the car, you know, where he's doing the getaway driving and he's like, don't roll down the window. But he could have Kevin Harted all over that. He could have Kevin Sharted all over that scene, but he didn't. He didn't. He kind of, I don't know, to me, he played more of an authoritative, like a super serious version of Kevin Hart. And I was kind of okay with it. Like, normally I'm rooting for his demise, like, you know, the Die Hart series. I'm like, yeah, okay. Let's find ways to off Kevin Hart because he's just so annoying. But not in this one. I kind of liked him. And I mean, Kate Blanchett was just absolutely so cool. And the kind of like, almost like unspoken, or like the soliloquies almost, where she would like say things under her breath, right? The whole like, I'm not a bounty hunter. Like, you know, and she just seemed so cool. Just kind of like, you could tell she maybe was too old for this. Maybe, you know, they played on that because of the actress that they put in the role, that she wasn't, you know, in her 20s. And so they were really drawing on that. It was almost kind of like they were very aware, you know, of the age difference and kind of played with it. And I'm okay with that. But again, I don't know to stay true to the storyline of the video game. So I apologize for that. But really, and thank you for attending my TED Talk, because I am now coming to my conclusion that, you know what, of all of the 5 movies, it was the most fun 2 hours spent of all of its contenders. And so hence it's my number 1.
This should be like the subtitle of the show, 10 hours wasted. How do we rank it?
Yeah. What was least painful?
I will say though, Carrie, that was a very refreshing take. I think I needed that after my absolute vomit of words in the last part of my speech.
I think that's why I put it as my number 3 too, because it is fun when the combat is happening. Like Joseph said, I can't remember if it was Joseph or Jason, the fight with Ace in
Ace of Spades.
Yeah, that is fun, and that does capture the spirit of the game. When they all stop talking and aren't interacting with each other, and you get the crazy, colorful action sequences and all the crazy guns and stuff, it does bang on nail that. I just wish that they would have stuck with the original vision. I do think there's pieces here, and that's why it's my 3 and not my 5.
Well, and one thing that, sorry, Jason, to cut you off, that I don't know if you guys can corroborate on this with me, but I was told, or I read somewhere when I was doing just some like notes research, that Kate Blanchett filmed this movie before Tar, and yet it came out how long after? That's absolutely insane.
This movie came out almost 3 years after it was finished because of all the stuff that they messed around with, and there was a lot of licensing stuff as well. This movie was in purgatory for a while. We didn't know if this was actually going to get released.
That's insane. Like, I guess I missed that, but like, that's unreal to me. And I guess it kind of clears some things up for me in the process.
Well, apparently we now need to make It's Not That Bad popcorn buckets and send them over to Carson just to get them through this.
Please do. Please do.
So good, so good, so good.
Great brands, great prices. Everyone's got a reason to rack.
Because they have framed jeans.
Nike? Yes.
Just so many good brands.
Vince, Kurt Geiger London, Rag & Bone, and more are at Nordstrom Rack stores now. You never know what you'll find, but you know it's going to be so good. Great brands, great prices. That's why you rack.
This episode is brought to you by Nerds Gummy Clusters, the sweet treat that always elevates the vibe. With a sweet gummy surrounded with tangy, crunchy nerds, every bite of Nerds Gummy Clusters brings you a whole new world of flavor. Whether it's game night, on the way to a concert, or kicking back with your crew, unleash your senses with Nerds Gummy Clusters.
This episode is brought to you by Atlassian. Atlassian makes the team collaboration software that powers enterprise businesses around the world, including over 80% of the Fortune 500. With Atlassian's AI-powered software like Jira, Confluence, and Loom, you'll have more time to do the work that matters. In fact, Atlassian customers experience a 25% reduction in project duration per year. Unleash the potential of your team at Atlassian.com. Atlassian.
Reagan, released August 30th, stars Dennis Quaid, Penelope Ann Miller, It's Not a Grid on a Curve Without John Voight, Mena Suvari, Kevin Dillon, and Justin Chatwin. There were also some very interesting cameos in this, including Kevin Sorbo, C. Thomas Howell, Dan Lauria, Pat Boone not playing himself because there was someone playing Pat Boone, and Scott Stapp, lead singer of Creed, playing Frank Sinatra.
Hold me now.
Can you take me? No. The film had a budget of $25 million, worldwide gross $30 million. When it was released on that August 30th weekend, it debuted at number 3 with $10.3 million. At number 1 was the 6th week of Deadpool and Wolverine at $19.5 million. But Alien Romulus was at number 2 with $11.6 million.
You're damn right it was.
At the 2024 Family Film Awards, Penelope Ann Miller won for Outstanding Performance in a Historical Drama. And at this year's Razzies, it's nominated for Worst Film. Dennis Quaid is nominated for Worst Actor. Leslie Ann Down is nominated for Worst Supporting Actress in her role as Margaret Thatcher. Jon Voight is nominated for Worst Supporting Actor. Dennis Quaid and Penelope Ann Miller are nominated for Worst Screen Combo, and the film is nominated for Worst Screenplay. Over at Rotten Tomatoes, the film has a tomatometer of 18% and a popcorn meter of 98%, giving this a massive, doing the math on this one here, 80% difference between tomatometer and popcorn meter, and that just doesn't make sense at all. Over at Metacritic, the film has a Metascore of 22. Over at IMDb, it sits at 6.2. At Letterboxd, it has a 2.2 stars out of 5 rating for a 44%, and at the movie database, sits at 61%, giving this an aggravated aggregate of 50.83%, highest of all the 5. However, because that is a massive difference between tomatometer and popcorn meter. Massive. Without the popcorn meter, the aggregate drops to 41.4% and not the highest of the 5. I'm going to put this out there first before we even get into our rankings. Can anyone explain to me how this would possibly have a popcorn meter of 98 freaking percent? Lyle.
I do. I know how that worked. Everybody who doesn't know how to use a computer called their grandkids and said, can you let me know how to work the Google so I can give the Boomer Avengers Endgame a high score on the movie website? That's what happened.
There is no way, even the most forgiving of film critics, of usually which we are, would not give this film a 98% audience score. Like,
if I may, I could possibly see it being because it ended beautifully. I mean, I always often say, why do I watch the things that make me cry? But damn it, if it didn't get dusty in the room at the end of the movie. And I think maybe if that's what people were looking for, a feel good, yet bring you to tears kind of movie, it did its job.
Okay, since you put it that way, I now have to ask where you have this rated.
Oh, you're making me go first.
You're going to sit here and say it's got a happy ending, made you cry?
I knew I shouldn't have spoken up.
And you already have your number 1 and number 2 picks.
You asked a question. I was giving you an answer. Okay.
Never put your hand up in class.
I know, right? I should know better. I put this actually as a 4.
Okay.
And I struggled with this. I struggled with the whole damn list because remember that I said to you that I couldn't talk to Jay for like a month leading up to this record tonight because I really struggled and I had different drafts and lists and I would realign my top 5. And this one was tough, but inevitably it did land at 4. And I think that's only because of the contenders that it was up against. But I admit that I'm not completely up on my historical figures and my political, my politician knowledge isn't great, you know? So I wasn't as aware of the intricate details of Ronald Reagan's past and present and as president and future And you know what? I thought as far as a movie, a concise telling of his political career and his life, I thought it was done well. Now, I also like Quentin Tarantino movies, and I found that this one really played with the different timeline of his life. And you'd be watching something and you're like, okay, so that happened. And then as you're watching the movie, you're kind of like brought back full circle to that one moment. And it's like, oh, okay, so this was going on in the world at the same time as that happened. And this is how we got here, kind of thing. Like a whole kind of circular timeline, most specifically to the scene where he was shot. And then that's like right off the start. And then you get back to it and you learn more about, what was going on at that moment. I liked this movie. I didn't hate it. And I think that my takeaway from it was educational. It was enlightening, and it was kind of lovely. The ending kind of got me.
Okay, I'm really going to put a damper on this conversation because you say lovely things about this film, and it's my number 5. This is the biggest cinematic hand job I've ever seen of a biopic.
Yes, Jason Whistle.
Dear freaking God. Okay. At first I was like, Dennis Quaid is Ronald Reagan with a very Saturday Night Live impression. It kind of grew on me a little bit. I had nothing really against Dennis Quaid's portrayal of Ronald Reagan. The acting is horrible. There are times when Penelope Ann Miller would say a line and then looks off camera like she's waiting for the director to feed someone a line. Mena Suvari, not bad. I have no problem with Leslie Ann Down as Margaret Thatcher, but if you're going to do a biopic about somebody, you need to tackle both the good and the bad. Okay? Covering Reagan working with Gorbachev towards, combined nuclear disarmament, the whole Berlin Wall. Like those are pivotal moments, yes, but you cannot glaze over Iran-Contra. You cannot glaze over Reaganomics. You cannot glaze over, like, there was so much about Reagan's presidency that is not flowery and picture perfect. And the fact that the narrator of this film, the point of view of this, is from a Russian KGB operative in 2024. This is tonally deaf as completely deaf. You can't. I see what they were trying to do. It's like a Hallmark Coles Notes biography that feels like a public school play, and the dialogue kind of matches. Lyle, I see you nodding your head.
Yep, it's my 5 too, and that's surprising given this list, Jason. That's surprising given this list. At least the others were faithful in a way, but this was a Boomer's Avengers Endgame. This was, for somebody who likes red hats, this was a great movie. Because don't pay no attention to all the other that's happened in his life. Let's just talk about how he might be Jesus. I hated this. It's Dennis Quaid doing a bad impression in front of a green screen for 2 hours. It looked bad. It sounded bad. The writing was bad. They missed so many weird things. Not just in they talked about things and like basically just shoved everything that didn't make the guy look good to the side. It in a list that was designed to destroy me, it feels like. I'm amazed that this is the number 5, but it is, which just goes to show you what I have written down. The bastardization of your childhood is not worse than a fluff piece on a man who was a real bastard. And is the reason that a lot of people down in the States, me, Joseph, and Carson's age, will never be able to afford a home.
Carson, how you holding up there on Reagan?
Beautiful. I was like, Sorry. Give me a minute. I do have a bit of a different interpretation, but I like pretty much everyone that's gone through the cycle so far has been relatively close on the money. And Jason, I feel like you and I are in a good spot because when we did the Keep Watch Pass on biopics, you and I kind of went into some of the reasons why biopics, especially in the last 2-3 years, struggle. And it's the surface level aspect where Lyle's completely right. If you're not going to show warts and all, then why make the movie? Like you kind of you got to take the good with the bad, and it's one of those things too where I'm like, and not to get political, but does the political climate of the United States have an effect on how this movie kind of rates, depending on the critic versus the audience side, which I think is an interesting take. But it sounds so bad because Dennis Quaid has done great things, but like I absolutely agree where I'm like he's too focused on doing the Reagan impression to where you lose out on even the moments he's in. Like, I'm going to say it right now. David Henry, Wizards of Waverly Place, my boy, a little problematic. let me specify that. A little problematic. Did a better Ronald Reagan when he was young than Dennis Quaid did in his prime eras. And it's kind of just existing. But for me personally, as someone that doesn't, and no offense to our red, white, and blue listeners, I don't know anything about Ronald Reagan. Like, you could give me a test right now, I'd probably fail it. But I wouldn't fail it now because I've watched, obviously, the most patriotic film ever released in the history of mankind.
America.
You're damn right. So now I know. But it just kind of feels like, yeah, like let's jerk off a guy that's been dead for 30 years. It's like it's funny because I don't want to give it the rating I'm about to give it, but like at least I learned some things and then was like interested in being like, all right, I'm gonna go look up what this man actually did on the side. And like I'm sitting there and I'm like, all right, well, I learned some things. Like I get he's a very popular president. And then I'm sitting there and then I go to Wikipedia and I'm like, oh, buddy. And that's kind of like why I sit with it being like, yeah, like you gotta show everything. And it's fine that you didn't, because let's be real, no one outside of certain people in the US are gonna rewatch this movie. Like, let's be real here. But I did put it as my number 2. And that's because, and I know that's nuts, but it's like, I at least watched it and was just like, yeah, I know who this is for. I know why this was made, and I know the exact demographic, and I learned something. So like, I'm like, I agree with the film, but I'm sitting here like, I would probably rewatch this before I rewatched Madam Web and Borderlands. So, and just to clarify, I wouldn't rewatch any of them.
All right, Joseph, where have you got Reagan?
Yeah, so I have this as my number 3. Let me just start out by saying that I watched this as a doubleheader. It was 2 movies in one day, and I watched this after a movie that we will discuss in a little bit. And I think this one was just a little bit more grounded and easy to follow than that movie. We'll get to that when we get to it. But in any case, I watched this one, and at least I could follow along with what was happening. And the one thing I will say, though, the pacing was ridiculous. I know they were trying to fit in a lot, but I was like so disoriented. I was like, where are we right now? Like, what's the timeline? Where in terms of, so I was a little bit, struck by that. That was one thing that kind of took me out of it a little bit. But in terms of the overall package, I was like, okay, like I get this story. I understand it. Like it is what it is. Scott Stapp as Frank Sinatra. I just like to think of them being like in a room, like, all right, we need to find someone to play Frank Sinatra. Then someone hauls up Creed's 2001 Thanksgiving performance. So they're like, that's our guy. That's the dude that's going to do it. He's Old Blue Eyes. I've never seen anybody that could pull that off better than Scott Stapp. Anyway, I thought that was great. That was definitely a boost to this movie. And then I was reminded as I was sort of thinking about this movie earlier today about Nate Bargatze's comedy special that he did your friend Nate Bargatze, where he has a line. It's like, I can tell you, I don't know anything about history because every history movie I watch on the edge of my seat. I watched the movie Pearl Harbor. I was just as surprised as they were. I didn't know anything about any of this. And so, anyways, that line from Nate Bargatze came to me before this podcast. But overall, like the other thing that I really wish, man, I wish Phil Hartman was still with us to do a comedic response to, because I felt like Dennis Quaid was not doing so much an impersonation of Ronald Reagan. He was doing a straight impersonation of Phil Hartman's impersonation of Ronald Reagan. Like he didn't do it for comedy, but it was that. Like I was like, I feel like I've heard this impersonation before, and it was just not played for jokes. It was just straight, and I was like, no, thank you, Dennis. Also, I just want to point out very quickly, young John Voight in this movie, he looks terrifying. Like I've never seen like the CGI, whatever effects are used to make him look the way that he does. I was like, God damn it, he looks terrifying. I've never seen anything. Anyways, number 3.
Oh man. Well, you know what? If we haven't had enough John Voight, let's go for another round. Megalopolis, released September 27th, stars Adam Driver, Giancarlo Esposito, Natalie Emanuel, Aubrey Plaza, Shia LaBeouf, John Voight, Lawrence Fishburne, Talia Shire, Jason Schwartzman, Grace Vanderwall, Balthazar Getty, and Dustin Hoffman. Written and directed and financed by Francis Ford Coppola. This script was apparently written back in the 80s and has been in development hell for like the last 40 years. You have to listen to the number of actors that at points in time have been attached to or considered to be in this film over the last 40 years. Paul Newman, Uma Thurman, Robert De Niro, James Gandolfini, Nicolas Cage, Leo DiCaprio, Russell Crowe, Edie Falco, Kevin Spacey, Christian Bale, Zendaya, Cate Blanchett, Michelle Pfeiffer, James Caan, Jessica Lange, Jude Law, Oscar Isaac, and Forrest Whitaker.
How many of those people are dead now?
Yeah, that's
like 3 or 4 of them, I think. I feel like I missed some, but
the film had a budget of $120 million. Domestically, only made 7.6. Worldwide, only made $14 million. When it was released, it debuted at number 6 with only $4 million and was the lowest grossing wide release film that week. Debuting at number 1 was The Wild Robot with $35.7 million, and Devara Part 1 debuted with $5.6 million in fewer theaters than Megalopolis did. At the 2025 Saturn Awards, it was nominated for Best Sci-Fi Film, lost to Dune Part 2. At Cannes in 2024, it was nominated for the Palme d'Or, lost to Anora. At the 2025 Hawaii Film Critics Society Awards, nominated for Best Overlooked Film, lost to Hitman. At the 2024 Philadelphia Film Critics Circle Awards, Aubrey Plaza was nominated for Best Supporting Actress but lost to Margaret Qualley for The Substance. At the 2025 Portland Critics Association Awards, it was nominated for Best Sci-Fi Feature, lost to Dune Part 2. And at the 2024 Michigan Movie Critics Guild Awards, it was nominated for Film Excellence, but lost to The Fire Inside. And at the Razzies this year, it is nominated for Worst Film. Francis Ford Coppola is nominated for Worst Director. John Voight and Shia LaBeouf are both nominated for Worst Supporting Actor. The entire cast is nominated for Worst Screen Combo, and it's nominated for Worst Screenplay. Over at Rotten Tomatoes, the film has a tomatometer of 45% and a popcorn meter of 35%. At Metacritic, it sits at 55, with IMDb sitting at 4.7. At Letterboxd, it has 2.3 stars out of 5 for a 46% score, and at the Movie Database, sits at 53%, giving this film an aggravated aggregate of 45.16%, which, if you eliminate Reagan's 98% popcorn meter, this would be highest with 45.16%. But because Rotten Tomatoes audiences apparently liked Reagan so much, it takes top spot. But Joseph, Megalopolis, your take.
All right. So there have been, to this point, 3 certainties in my life: death, taxes, and if Aubrey Plaza is in something, I'm going to enjoy it. It ruined that. That's not the case
Get
anymore.
out of here. Absolutely be gone with that. Sorry, continue, but be gone.
I think Aubrey Plaza was fine, to be clear. I think she was the best part of this movie. I was so profoundly bored the entire time. I didn't know what was going on. This was not for me. I will say it. Listen, you guys might have a differing opinion on this, and I'm completely open to those interpretations, but not for me at all. This was just boring. I didn't understand it. The one thing that I will say about it is that point where they're just standing on like a clock overlooking the city, it was reminiscent of Great Big C's masterpiece music video for When I'm Up, I Can't Get Down. That is the most glowing praise.
Not just connect Francis Ford Coppola to Great Big C.
That is the most Joseph Whalen comment we could ever get.
Joseph Whalen.
I did it, guys. But no, I just didn't. This wasn't. And Shia LaBeouf, man, get him off of any screen. I don't want to see him in anything, man. Like, I just don't want to see him. Adam Driver is mostly fine. I'm fine with him in most of the things that he's in. I think that he's a very talented actor, but I just could not get behind this protagonist. I just couldn't get behind or engaged in anything that was happening in this movie. An amazing cast, like even like below, like Chloe Fineman. I'm a big fan of her on SNL, so I was like, oh, she's in this. This is kind of cool. But then I was like, no, like this is weird. She's the sibling of Shia LaBeouf, and they're in a relationship that's that. Like, I was like, what is happening? I don't want any part of this. No, thank you. Yeah, no. The one thing that kept running through my head was the Step Brothers line. It's the Catalina wine mixer. It just kind of, that just kept replaying over and over in my head every time someone said Adam Driver's character's name. But anyway, this was number 5. I just couldn't. I didn't have the mental capacity to sit and watch this. I didn't understand it. This was the movie that I watched before Reagan that made me be like, oh, Reagan, okay, yeah, all right. This is kind of, I can understand what's happening here. This was just not for me, and it ruined my accepted truth that anything with Aubrey Plaza in it, I will enjoy. But in any case, I will pass it along to the next person.
All right, Carson, you're that next person. Megalopolis.
Horde is in session right now. Also, apologies to the amount of expletives that have flown through my mouth that will now have to be edited.
Let me cue the beep button.
I saw this movie opening weekend, Friday night in theaters. And I'd just like to say,
no,
you don't have bucket? To... buddy, I wish. I wish. I gotta say, if you don't have to even like the movie. You don't have to love the movie. But if you don't appreciate the story and the dedication and the drive of a director, of a producer, of a man, peak cinema, that you don't like movies. This movie, I'm going to be honest. I've seen it 3 times now. I still don't get it. I don't know what's going on. I don't. But I will say, this, in my mind, is almost an encapsulation of what we need from cinema. People, every time I look on Twitter or I talk to people, it's always like, oh, there's nothing interesting. There's nothing new. There's nothing different. Francis Ford Coppola gave that to you and you shit on it because it was different. I get it. It's a wild movie. Absolutely insane, bar none. It's really hard to follow. But not only do I disagree with the actors being kind of crapped on in this movie, because Adam Driver, I thought was amazing. Aubrey Plaza, loved the caricature that she was playing. Shia LaBeouf, dare I say, resurgence. I loved it. I thought it was so out of this world fascinating. that even though I still don't know what's inherently happening, I can't stress that enough. It's such a cool movie. And I think the reason I have so much appreciation for it is that this is exactly what I picture a futuristic society looking like in the mind of a man that was born in the 1950s or grew up in the 1950s. Like when I picture a young Francis Ford Coppola getting into cinema and thinking about the future and thinking about society and what we kind of interpreted the future as, this is such a cool interpretation of that. Is there aspects of it that I struggle with? Yeah. Do I understand why airport escalators that just let you stand on them and take you to the next gate are for some reason the pathway in this movie as a sidewalk? No, I don't. But I don't think anyone is inherently supposed to. This to me was such a push for cinema, a push for the medium, something that I feel like needed to happen, even though I know it got absolutely dunked on. It made no money. No one saw it. But it's such a fascinating piece of art to me that there's no other place for this than number one. It's different. It made me think. I'm still thinking about it. That may be a problem. Not my problem, but still. Anyway, it's yes.
All right, Lyle, Megalopolis.
1 second, let me get my notes here. What the is happening?
Yes.
What the is happening? At any point in time, you could drop me into this movie and I would just be like, yep, that's the movie for sure. Watching it felt like when you go to a museum and you see an art piece that's like worth like $7.8 million behind bulletproof glass. It's got two guys in front of it, and it just looks like someone threw an egg at the wall that's stuck. And you're like, maybe I just don't get it. It's an abstract art piece of a movie. It's not for me. It looks pretty. I have no goddamn idea what it means, though. The only reason it's my 2 is because I understand that this is basically one of the most storied directors of all time going mad scientist, which is kind of what it feels like. Just throw it all in there. Let's see what we can do with it. And to get a movie made after such a tumultuous development process is also something to be said. So the fact that this even got out was kind of crazy, especially with all of the different casting. But man alive, I have no idea what happened. I watched it once. I went back and had to watch a YouTube breakdown of what happened in it, and I still didn't necessarily get it. It's futuristic politics. It's not as crazily offensive as the other ones on the list, so it gets my 2.
Carrie, Megalopolis.
You know, it's almost like the crew has read my notes because I didn't want to have to get bleeped. So I wrote, what in the Megalopolis have I just watched? Because I had no idea what was going on. I had no idea. Like, even the actors portraying the characters, half the time I didn't know what they were all about. Like, and I'm so sorry. I know I'm going to stand alone on this, but in the same week, I watched this movie and then I watched The House of Gucci. And I learned something about myself, and that is I don't like Adam Driver as an actor.
That's heresy.
I don't.
Absolute heresy.
It was okay. So House of Gucci, it was kind of like as if Jar Jar was the son of Gucci, right? Like he was just he just played such an he played a Jar Jar. And in this movie, I realized that my dislike of Adam Driver was solidified by his role in this movie. I could not get behind him. I was like, is he good? Is he bad? He's just kind of blah. It's almost kind of like I don't know if he sold it out or just kind of mailed it in, or like he just kind of seemed blah. Like, I don't know. I don't get don't get the praise for Adam Driver. He's my Kevin Hart. And this
how
movie,
dare you?
This movie
how
is.
dare you
I
put that man on that level?
I
bring it on.
Harry,
This
he's only been in
movie is
one
a
good movie.
5. 5 for me. 5.
Do I have to walk out of this room right now? 'Cause
Harry,
I will. I will
you
watch
a
right now.
movie from 2013 called The F Word. It's him and Daniel Radcliffe, and it's like a sad rom-com.
Buddy.
That's the only good movie that
He
I
just
think
had
you
sex
can-
and he's now having nachos. It's
Yes.
the best moment of his life.
That's the best moment of the movie. I just had sex and I'm about to eat nachos. Like that is peak Adam Driver, and it was before he got really big.
All right, before I get into my megalopolis, just to pile on the Adam Driver here. No.
That's scarring, right? That's still fresh. That.
Okay. First of all these award nominations for this film, I think it's entirely based on the fact that it's Francis Ford Coppola, and it's out of maybe respect for the legacy of what he's done.
100%.
This film makes no f***ing sense whatsoever.
0.
None. You have Adam Driver, and I think we've said enough about Adam Driver. You got Jon Voight in the worst of 2 Jon Voight performances on this episode alone. And remember, we talked about Jon Voight on the movies of 2024 from a third film that qualified. Jumping around like a toddler when the balloons comes out while he's watching wrestlers at some weird thing at Madison Square Garden. I feel bad for Lawrence Fishburne. I feel bad for Giancarlo Esposito. I really feel bad for Natalie Emmanuel, who I thought was actually really good in this. Felt bad for Aubrey Plaza. I have no thoughts whatsoever on Shia LaBeouf. But visually, this film brought a lot. Some really cool visuals in this, even if they are stolen from a Great Big Sea video.
Yeah, there it is.
But it is something that you could want to watch on a big screen, maybe with the volume off. But visually, I think it looks cool. There's definitely a vision in how this is plotted out. Whether script-wise and plot-wise it makes sense. It feels a bit pretentious. Actually, it feels very pretentious. But I think from a visual storytelling standpoint, the film is good. I think from a execution standpoint, the film is not good. So it kind of sits right in that 3 pocket for me. All right.
Oh, can I just add that I absolutely loved the comeback of Dustin Hoffman? Like,
very small role, but yeah.
We don't see enough of him. And it was kind of like, when I'm watching it, at first I'm like, oh my God. And then I started thinking the whole time, I'm like, when was the last time I saw him in a movie? Like, it's been a minute, and it was so cool. Yes, it was a small role, but I think it was nice to see him on the screen again.
It was great to see Dustin Hoffman. It was not good to see Jon Voight sitting there going, what do you think of this boner I got? Like, no.
But as far as batshit crazy, I think he played it well.
Oh, absolutely. And speaking of batshit crazy, Joker Folie à Deux, released October 4th, starring Joaquin Phoenix, Lady Gaga, Brendan Gleeson, Catherine Keener, Zazie Beetz, Steve Coogan, Harry Lottie, Lee Gill, and Bill Smitrovich. Directed by Todd Phillips, the film had a budget of $190 million. Domestically, only made $58 million. Worldwide, $207 million. When it debuted on that weekend, it debuted with $37.6 million, debuting at number 1. But then it dropped from week 1 to week 2, 81.4% in box office take, giving this film the record for worst ever drop from week 1 to week 2 on a percentage basis for a comic book film, taking that record away from the Marvels. And then it dropped in week 3 another 69.3%. In fact, the first Joker film made more in its first week than the sequel did in its entire cinematic run. At the 2025 Yoga Awards, Lady Gaga won for Worst Foreign Actress. At the 2025 Hawaii Film Critics Association Awards, nominated for Best Comic Book Film, lost to Deadpool and Wolverine. Lady Gaga was nominated for Best Actress, lost to Demi Moore for The Substance. At the 2024 Golden Trailer Awards, it was nominated for Best Thriller, lost to Anatomy of a Fall, and nominated for Best Music, lost to Barbie. And at the Razzies this year, it's nominated for Worst Film, Worst Director. Joaquin Phoenix is nominated for Worst Actor. Lady Gaga is nominated for Worst Actress. Both Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga are nominated for Worst Screen Combo. It's nominated for Worst Remake, Ripoff, or Sequel, and nominated for Worst Screenplay. This film leads everyone with 7 nominations at the Razzies this year. The other films that we've talked about all have 6. Over at Rotten Tomatoes, the film has a tomatometer and a popcorn meter, both sitting at 31%. At Metacritic, has a Metascore of 45. At IMDb, it sits at 5.2. Letterboxd, 2.4 stars for a 48%. And at the Movie Database, a 55% score, giving this an aggravated aggregate of 43.6%. And Lyle, it's your number one. Yet, it ruins everything you love.
It is. And it doesn't, actually. I like this more than I thought I was going to. But it's the perfect example of why everything that's really good doesn't need a sequel. It feels like Arthur Fleck was flung right back to where he was at the beginning of the first movie. He is in that exact same situation at the beginning of this movie. The same arc, the same everything. Is he the Joker? Is he not? Does this control your psyche? Does it not? And the pieces here are good. I don't mind Lady Gaga as this version of Harley Quinn. I think the best parts of this movie are when they are on the screen together by themselves. I think that's when you take away the music and all the hokey bullshit that does take place, put that away, and those two are good together. But a musical, all those montages, there's more Batman themes in it, which makes it feels more Batmanish than the first Joker movie. Not that it needed it. It all momentum gets taken away by the ending to this movie. By the way this all ties up in a bow at the end, it feels like they didn't know what to do with it, and they still wanted it to end with, and here's the Joker. But they couldn't do that because of all the work they did with Arthur throughout the movie. So they were just like, okay, we have to find a cop-out. So here's your cop-out. Quick spin, shuffle, skip in the middle of this. Spin, the Joker is me. Shuffle, gonna build a mountain. Skip, literally everything else. It's number one because it's not bad. I don't think it's as terrible as a lot of people made it out to be. I just think the first one was so good and had such a different take that this is an absolutely baffling direction to take the sequel. I think if you would have done something that was more along the lines of the first one and continued that story of how the city reacts to him shooting the late night host on live TV and how a Harley Quinn gets involved in all of this, and you had more of the just courtroom scenes where it's him defending himself and renouncing the Joker before the song. There's pockets of greatness, but it doesn't wash out in the end. So it is my number one, but that's not that hard to do on this list.
All right, Joseph, it's also your number one.
And I have to say, Lyle, hard disagree on the music of this. The best song in this by a mile is the version of To Love Somebody that Lady Gaga and Joaquin Phoenix do. I love that. For that reason alone, it's number one for me. I love that. I mean, it was just like, oh, okay, sick. This is a good rendition of this song. And I didn't know that I needed it until I got it. I was 30 minutes in. I was like, this is fine. Like, it's passable. I didn't, I didn't have like all the context for it. Again, like I was just kind of like, I liked it for what it was. Brendan Gleeson is like one of my favorite, like just general actors ever. So like him just being in there, I was like, oh, sick. It's Brendan Gleeson. But Lyle, I will agree with you about the ending. The ending was super abrupt and like just kind of like I know that he's not supposed to be like the sympathetic figure that we're like all sort of rooting for. Like he is the hero in his own story, but the villain in the broader story. So it's like I guess we're supposed to, not necessarily want him to be, as happy as he could be, but at the same time it just was like super deflating that like him and Harley don't end up, running off doing whatever, and then he just gets stabbed. Like I was just like, it's kind of deflating. But overall I think it was my number one, and yeah, by a large margin because of their version of To Love Somebody by the Bee Gees. I just loved it. I was like, all right, sick, this is number one, easy, we're done. Yeah, that was it for me, number one.
All right, Carrie, this is middle of the road for you at number 3.
It is. And you know what? I really wanted it to be like a 1 or a 2. And I think it would have been, if it weren't for its contenders. A few things, though. First of all, how incredibly hauntingly sad and incredibly acted. The scenes where by all rights he should be expressing emotion, and yet the laughter, it was just like I literally had chills watching it, and they crept back when I thought about it after the fact. I'm like, oh my God, that was like pure madness and so well played. I like Lady Gaga. I really, really like her. She's an incredible actress. But help me understand, guys. Like, so Harley Quinn, and the story behind Harley Quinn was that she was a psychologist that was drawn to the Joker and led to madness. But this was a completely different take.
I mean, for what it's worth, this is the first film to officially appear under the DC Elseworlds label. So this is like an alternate universe of what you would normally consider to be DC. So this isn't the Harley Quinn that we're all used to. Also, this is barely Harley Quinn, but keep going.
Yes.
So, I mean, again, I think in my mind, or I was going into this feeling like Harley Quinn would have that same backstory. Okay, so there was kind of that in my head. I'm like, so you mean to say that she's just kind of put herself there? She, committed herself so that she could get to know the Joker. Like, I don't know. It didn't sit right with me, only because I was expecting the storyline that I was expecting. And it was different, and different sometimes is hard to accept. Also, this really plays with my theory of, doesn't life deserve a musical? Like, don't you just want to break out into song and dance just randomly on a Tuesday?
You tell me to stop doing that.
In the middle of the day? I mean, come on. But this actually made that happen, and it was like, okay, so there's a musical number. And at that one scene where he's standing and watching the news and kind of learning of his demise, his inevitable demise, right? So that musical scene, was that in his head, or was that in reality and other people were enjoying the song that he broke into?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure if that's in his head or not, because there are definitely musical numbers here that are in his head, and there's others that aren't really played as if they're in his head. So,
which I thought was really cool. It was kind of like, and again, you really kind of get the feeling that music is something that, and I think they kind of led to that, where they wanted him to join the choir, because it would help his, I don't know, like reform him back into society, like kind of, make him happy and bring joy, and the joy of music. So I kind of liked that. I don't know, but again, I didn't know what to expect going into this. I honestly didn't see the first Joker movie, so I admit that I might have been missing some of the backstory that I needed, but I enjoyed it for what it was. I thought it was good and right down the middle.
All right. So, kids, if you're going to watch Joker Folie à Deux, please make the takeaway be, this is what happens to your voice if you want to be a singer and you smoke way too much. You sound like Joaquin Phoenix. But the film feels so much like they had maybe an hour's worth of script, and then they're like, oh, shit, how are we supposed to make a 2-hour film out of this? Oh, wait, we got Lady Gaga. Let's just put a bunch of songs in it.
Music.
You do not need to make this a musical. If you want to make some kind of Harley Quinn-based musical, there's an animated show that would be perfect for that.
And it's amazing, too.
Oh, the Harley Quinn TV series is great. And a musical episode would be literally right in line with what that works with. But the moments that weren't musical numbers, I felt worked. You know, the Joker on trial, the Joker who became this like rallying cry for people who were fed up with the system in the city that doesn't care about them. That makes sense. And I even like the fact that they kind of had the Joker in waiting in behind the entire time. Connor's story is kind of in this film in the background. And if you know what to look for, you basically see the rise of who will become, I guess, the real Joker, and takes his inspiration from Arthur Fleck. So I get what they were trying to set up in a very subtle way. The musical aspect takes away from this. Like, you did not need to make this a musical. You did not. It doesn't need it. It's style for style's sake and at the sacrifice of the story. And that's not a good thing. And unfortunately, the rest of the film suffers because of it. So for me, it's a 4. It's absolutely a 4. I mean, because it has a decent cast. I mean, I don't mind Lady Gaga as Harley Quinn. She's fine in it. She would be a good Harley Quinn. But I mean, we've already had Margot Robbie give us a Harley Quinn that we all truly enjoy. Why do more? I don't get it. I don't understand. We didn't need this. If you put Margot Robbie in this, but then again, her Harley Quinn wouldn't even fit tonally in this. So it's not good. We're definitely hurting here. So for me, Joker 2 sits at 4. All right, Carson, gonna take us home on this one. This is your number 5 film, Rage Away.
Number 5, Joker, Folie of is how I like to define this movie. And I think the reason that I have so many inherent issues with it is, and I go to this a lot in some of these episodes where I go Ian Malcolm in Jurassic Park, where I'm like, you were so obsessed with the fact that you didn't stop to think if you should. And I don't know what Todd Phillips was inherently on while making this movie, but to me, it just comes off as Hollywood directors, production companies, studios. You can have a really good movie and not need to make a sequel out of it. And I think that's a big struggle for this one in particular, is it almost shows all of its nasty colors because of that mainstream effect, so to speak. And I'm not gonna lie, like, I'm gonna push back on even some of the critic sides. I don't think this was a fault of Joaquin Phoenix. I don't think it was a fault of Lady Gaga. It just simply was a movie that didn't hit. It didn't even feel like the movie I wanted it to be. And I think that's the hardest part, where I really enjoyed the first Joker. It was unique, it was different, it was impactful. This one truly just felt like, hey, we're going to go an entirely separate direction in hopes of Todd Phillips designing some infatuation in his mind. And to me, how 50 Shades series actually came from a fanfic of Twilight, Joker Folie à Deux is a fanfic of its first movie. And not a good fanfic where everyone's going off to read it because they need more content, but a fanfic that you see and you're like, oh, buddy, this didn't have to be made. And I think that's what I really struggle with, especially with what Hollywood pumps out nowadays is I get it, money, I get it, cinema is struggling. Getting butts and seats at the theater is harder than ever. But all this does is worsen that ideology, in my opinion. You release sequels like this, you released unfleshed out attempts at, I think it's kind of funny because I feel like I'm almost backpedaling on what I said about Megalopolis, where I'm like, this to me isn't the art we needed in cinema. And I think everyone that really enjoyed this movie is in a similar boat where you go this many years excited to see Arthur Fleck's journey beyond this point, excited to see how Arthur Fleck was interpreted and then getting that Harley Quinn interpretation. And you just can't beat audience disappointment. And that's what I think I really struggle with here in the end. I'm not mad at you. I'm just disappointed. And that's why it falls to that number 5 spot exactly.
That's so much worse.
Can I ask a question, though? Because Jay and I had this debate going into, this was, I think, the last of the movies that we watched. And we were like, do we need to watch the first Joker? Because neither one of us have seen it. So is there anything that we're missing or that would have helped in the watching of part 2?
Not necessarily, I don't think, personally.
Really? And I personally am like, it's just not the same movie. Like, this isn't a sequel. It's almost like a soft reboot.
Yeah.
So do you inherently have to see the first one? No. But if you're a fan of what they were originally doing, then this is a complete 90-degree turn on what the foundation was built on. And the excitement and and I know we were even saying this before the episode started about how we really enjoyed the darker take on DC, like the Penguin. And you had that in the palm of your hands and you just kind of threw it away. And I think that's what hurts the most.
I said, if you watch the first movie, his arc is almost exactly the same in this one.
If I could just interject here, I also didn't watch the first Joker, but I saw the SNL spoof with Oscar the Grouch, so I feel like I got the gist.
And if I may, Jason, before, and I'm so sorry to cut you off again, but have you guys seen Ghost Rider? Is that a comic film? This Joker Folie à Deux is the Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance to the Ghost Rider.
That's actually a very accurate assessment of it. You're so correct.
I was going to compare it to like fans of Pitch Black starring Vin Diesel and then switching over to the Chronicles of Riddick. It's a very, very different film. But in this case, Chronicles of Riddick, I think, is actually the better of the two films. But I mean, yeah, I think Spirit of Vengeance, and I know somewhere down the road, Spirit of Vengeance is going to have to happen on this show, but
probably going to be me.
Line up and take your medicine there, Lyle. You know what's coming.
The wrongs we must right. The fights we must win. The future we must secure together for our nation. This is what's in front of us. This determines what's next for all of us. We are Marines. We were made for this.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Since you're new to H&R Block, we'll look at your returns from the last 3 years for any money your last guy might have missed for free.
I could get money back from last year?
You could. We'll find any mistakes.
Could have really used that 2 years ago when I dated that mistake for 5 months.
Don't leave money on the table. Switch to H&R Block and get a free Second Look review. Second Look is included at no additional cost with the purchase of tax preparation. Results vary. All tax situations are different. Fees apply if you have us file an amended return.
All right. Before we get to who is the cream of the crop, or the cream of the crap, if you will, from this one, going to go around the horn we have our rankings, but who do you think is actually going to be nominated as worst picture of the year? And is there a film that deserved to be amongst this 5? And which film would you take out to put it in? Lyle, I'm going to toss this over to you first.
It's going to be Madam Web. I don't think it's going to be close. I think Madam Web is most definitely getting the nod, getting the Razzie for this. I don't think there's anything worse than it. Reagan's high score viewer-wise will keep it from getting the crap that it so rightfully deserves. Madam Web is definitely the worst movie of the year.
All right, Carson, over to you.
I'm with the same as Lyle, and I don't even think it's necessarily fair, but I truly do believe that Madam Web will receive it. In my opinion, a movie that should be on here is Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. If we're going to knock the 5 movies on this list for what they are, then you damn well better put in an absolute sham of a Hollywood sellout movie. And that's kind of how I feel on it. I don't know if you guys have seen it. I know Jason has for the episode we did, but that deserves to be on here, in my opinion. Above, I would even say, Madam Web. Like, truth be told, like, I would actually probably put Ghostbusters as the worst movie of the year over Madam Web, and that's a insanely impressive feat.
Carrie, which one do you think is going to win, and is there a movie that needs to be in these 5?
Well, I fear I didn't study for the exam today, so I didn't come prepared with a 6th option. But hearing a lot of the critic disdain for Madam Web, I agree with everyone that it's probably going to be the key runner for the Razzie.
Joseph?
Well, I think, I have to agree with the consensus that it will be Madam Web, which is unfair because I don't think there's a more accurate representation of what 2003 looked like than what Madam Web provided us. So I think that's number one, just completely unfair. And I just have to say, Jason, I do not have a other movie that I could nominate because you are the only reason I watch bad movies.
we got to break you somehow, right? You know, I'm actually going to disagree with all of you that say Madam Web is going to win the worst picture, even though it probably will.
Are you going to go back to the club?
I'm not going to go back to the club. No. I think it's either going to be Borderlands or Joker 2. And I say that because Madam Web has 3 words that is going to save it. Produced by Sony. Expectations are so low for the Sony live action Spider-Verse that we remember Morbius, and I had 0 expectations going into Madam Web. They met all, as in none of them, but I don't think, I mean, it's better than Morbius.
Yeah.
Pretty bad.
Borderlands had so much promise and failed so miserably at the box office, and Joker 2 comes on the heels of a critically acclaimed film and then bed that there's more of a letdown factor. So I think one of those 2 could win. But that being said, how is The Crow not in the top 5 here?
Ooh,
I think the worst part is I remember how excited you were, Jason, to go see
excited.
The Crow.
But then it's like you watch it and you're like, oh, that's not my Eric Draven. That's not my Shelley Webster. This is not The Crow.
Well, was FNAF not this past year, or was it the year?
No, I think it was 23.
It was the year before, and that was just a boring ass film.
It was close though. It was the end of the year, but did it not
Craven
miss
count?
the Razzies?
No, I think it was just so lackluster that no one even cared about it because it made bank, but it didn't move.
It was the
much.
equivalent of like vanilla hand lotion,
which is basically what they used to make the Reagan film.
Yeah. Yeah. My question is, did Craven count for this?
Not for it did as far as an acting perspective. So there was a nomination for Craven in the nominations because it's in there for worst remake, ripoff, or sequel. And Ariana DeBose is nominated for worst supporting actress for both Kraven the Hunter and Argyle. I'm happy Argyle isn't in the list because I think that's getting unfairly maligned. Argyle is a fun as hell film.
It's a great time. That's like, if we're talking about popcorn movies, then Argyle can be on that list. Like,
I
come
also
on.
really liked it too. I love Henry Cavill. Everybody in that movie is very talented. Maybe Craven deserves to be on this list over top of, I don't know who would go out is the thing. But I think Craven is in the stratosphere.
I think the problem with Sony is like, I keep thinking of that meme. It's like, my expectations were so low, but holy
yeah, basically.
So, hear me out, guys. I think if the four of the five of us picked Madam Web here. So I think that if it's not Madam Web, we have to do what we talked about at the start or before the episode, and we have to pitch in the money to get It's Not That Bad and Jason here to vote for the Razzies to get that subscription.
Agreed.
There we go. We'll start up some kind of like, starter fund. It's like, help Jay vote for the Razzies because
it's a poetic moment. Like it's kind of a full circle moment for the show. I think it's got to be.
Yeah, it's like all of a sudden like a baseball fan finally gets to vote for the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, exactly.
And then doesn't vote for Ichiro Suzuki.
There is no baseball Hall of Fame without Barry Bonds.
Don't get me started on that, Jason. Oh my God.
All right, soon on the It's Not That Bad Hall of Fame list. All right, so let's get to the rankings. And we have a tie for the best of the worst. So, starting at the bottom, Reagan comes in with an aggregate of 3.8. Megalopolis is next with an aggregate of 3.2. Joker, Folly of a Deuce comes in with 2.8. And Madam Web and Borderlands tie for 2.6 each, making them the cream of the crap. Now, let's remind our listeners what we voted for. Carrie, going to start with you. Your list from 1 through 5.
My number 1 pick was Borderlands. Number 2 was Madam Web. 3 was Joker Folie à Deux. And 4 was Reagan. And 5 was Megalopolis.
Lyle, what you got?
Number 5 was Old Man Yells at Cloud, the movie, Reagan. Number 4 was Madam Web. Number 3 was Borderlands. Number 2 was Megalopolis, just because it can't be offensive if you don't know what's happening. And number 1 was Joker.
You need that on a shirt. It can't be offensive if you don't know what's happening. Carson, your list.
Like, honestly, after just listening to all your guys' like actual answers, I think I might have to get my love for cinema license revoked. like it's just so far off that you might as well just burn. You might as well burn my channel at this point. Number 1 was The King's Megalopolis. Number 2 was Old Man Yells at Cloud, according to Lyle. Number 3 was Madam Web. Number 4 was Borderlands, and number 5 was Joker. Fully to.
All right, Joseph, what you got?
Number 1 was Joker Folie à Deux. Number 2 was Madam Web. Number 3 was Reagan. Number 4 was Borderlands. Number 5, Megalopolis. I am so sorry, Aubrey Plaza.
All right, and for me, I had Borderlands at number 1, Madam Web at number 2, Megaflopolis at number 3, Joker Folie à Deux at number 4, and Reagan at number 5. Guys, thank you so much for suffering through 10 hours of pain, misery, and films to go through this episode. Let's go around the horn and let everyone know where they can find you and what you guys have been up to. Lyle?
You can find me at Anthem Sports and Entertainment and on Danny Stover's podcast. Watch TNA Wrestling on Thursday nights, everybody.
Joseph?
You can find me on Instagram at Joseph Whalen17. You can find me on Twitter at Joe Whalen19. And I have been the voice of some very important curling content that has been produced and distributed on TSN's YouTube channel and tsn.ca. So for all the overlapping people that like bad movies and also curling, right there.
He is the most Newfoundland man on the planet.
Carson.
You can find me at Carson Elk 12 on Twitter. And if you're in the Southern Ontario area, please reach out to Carson Elk Media for any videography needs these days.
And Carrie.
Hi, I'm Carrie. Please don't find me after my comments on Adam Driver. I am so sorry. No. Let's go back to the club. And avoid the house of Gucci.
I'm going to get you a shirt with Adam Driver's picture on it. And underneath it's going to say, go back to the club.
Oh, no.
That's exactly why, Carrie, I didn't put my socials in mine, because I don't want a bunch of people with trucks and fish as their profile picture getting mad at me over the Reagan hate.
It was a great movie. I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know what these kids these days.
It was so good.
Let's see, the saving grace is no one listens to the show, so you're all good. All right. Lyle, Joseph, Carson, Carrie, thank you all so much. And to you, our listeners, well, you guys know the drill. If there's a movie out there that you think is unfairly maligned or is so bad that there's no way in a Razzie's hope of hell that we can find anything good to say about it, hit us up on social media at NotThatBadCast or go to our website at NotThatBadCast.com. While you're there, make sure you check out our merch section. Sorry, no popcorn buckets just yet. Until next time, he's Lyle, he's Joseph, he's Carson, she's Carrie, and I'm Jay. You guys are awesome. This is Grading on a Curve on the It's Not That Bad podcast channel, a proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network. Until next year, everyone, take care.
Do you love it loud? Come to Rockin' Pod Weekend in Nashville. Rock convention featuring panels, interviews, podcasts, signing sessions, vinyl, pop culture collectibles, and more. Over 30 celebrity guests, members of LA Guns, Accept, Kicks, and more. Live concerts, Nashville Rockin' Fest Thursday, Rare Hair on Friday, Tuck Smith and the Restless Hearts Saturday, Punchlines and Backlines All-Star Comedy Show on Sunday. Full details at rockinpod.com.